All right. Well, good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us. My name is Barry McKnight. I am the Community Engagement and Programming Coordinator for the La Crosse Public Library. It is our great pleasure to host this program tonight in collaboration with the La Crosse County Historical Society and La Crosse County Library System. We are recording this program, and after doing some minor editing, we will post it later this week to the library's YouTube channel, which is LPL Connects, all one word, as well as to our Facebook page. You'll be able to find the individual videos, the three vignettes that we'll be watching tonight on the of the Enduring Families Project on the La Crosse County Historical Society's website, which is lchshistory.org, as well as on the YouTube channel for the Enduring Families Project, which you can find by searching for that title. So a couple things before we get started. Like I said, please keep your microphone muted at all times. This is a very large group. We have 86 people so far together with us tonight. So we want to make sure everybody has a great experience hearing. And there's not any unnecessary distractions. Now, when you have questions throughout the course of the evening, please put them in the chat feature. The way this will work is we're going to, after some introductions, we're going to watch the three videos, the three vignettes, and then we're going to turn it over to the Enduring Families Project folks, the actors and the organizers, and I'll field the questions from the chat to them to kind of moderate it that way. So what is the Enduring Families Project? So most of you folks already know, and of course they'll be speaking about it themselves, but it's an interwoven two-part venture exploring the local history of African Americans and other non-white settlers. The two arms include a public school-based educational program and community-based historical reenactments. The project is under the fiscal sponsorship of the La Crosse County Historical Society. The goals of the Enduring Families Project are to build a more cohesive multicultural community through an inclusive history, to provide venues for community discussions, and to create opportunities for direct interactions between the diverse peoples of La Crosse. And this is their mission statement that I pulled off their website: to substantially broaden the local historical narrative by the positive portrayal of the contributions, struggles, and perseverance of early non-white settlers, providing a venue for the development of understanding and respect between people in our community, and a further springboard for community conversations, hopefully like this one. So I'll introduce all the folks tonight, and then I'll turn it over to Denise Christie Moss. So first, the producer, Denise Christie Moss. She is retired high school English speech and theater teacher, having taught at the Milwaukee High School of the Arts and Arts Magnet School within the Milwaukee Public School System. She's been a producer and occasional performer with the Enduring Families Project since its inception in June 2018. We also have Rebecca Mormon Krieger, who's the historian for the project. She's waving there. She first met folks from the Enduring Families Project in 1986 while researching an original production for the Milwaukee High School of the Arts. One character in the play, Thomas Shivers, was a former slave from Tennessee, and after the Civil War, he and his family walked to Wisconsin's Cheyenne Valley to buy a farm, and that walk took 2 years. In 2016, after retirement, she revisited the research, finding connections between Cheyenne Valley and La Crosse. Zechariah Moss's family had lived in La Crosse since its founding in the mid-18th century. There was a family connection, Thomas Shivers, that they'll talk about later. Their family historians provided many very specific pieces of history. And this is a quote from Rebecca, so hopefully I've got it right. The history for people of color has not been documented in traditional manners. It is unbelievable what is found in a diary belonging to a farmer's wife, in a deed or someone's will, in regimental orders, or even in a series of U.S. Census documents dated over several decades. These tiny pieces fit into a larger puzzle and created a story never brought to light. Our first actor will be Lynetta Coop, who is portraying Elizabeth Burt. Lynetta retired after 14 years as Executive Director of the Cooley Region Retired and Senior Volunteer Program, RSVP, in 2017. Since her retirement, she and her husband, Stephen, enjoy motorcycling, UTV riding, and traveling throughout the country and abroad. Other retirement pastimes include gardening, reading, serving in, as a prayer partner for the FSPA, serving on several community boards, dog sitting their grand dog Bascom, and yes, playing the role of Elizabeth Burt for the Enduring Families Project. Lynetta and her husband live in the town of Shelby and have one son, Stephen. Our next actor who will be portraying Nathan Smith is Walsty Pierre. Give a little wave there. He is not from the La Crosse area, but finds the Enduring Family Project a pivotal instrument to uplift the Black community. Walsty was born in Haiti and raised in Miami, Florida. He's been living in the Midwest since 2005. He's the reenactor of Nathan Smith, a farmer who also fosters youth that needed a safe place. Walsty is a local outpatient therapist who is inspired by Mr. Smith's story. Like Mr. Smith, Walsty's goal is to own a farm and provide a safe place, for children in the foster care system. And then our last actor who will be portraying George Edwin Taylor is Daryl Ferguson. Give a wave, Daryl. Daryl is a native of Chicago. He received a Bachelor of Arts in German in 2001 from the University of Illinois and moved to La Crosse in 2007. Currently, he's a special needs paraprofessional at Onalaska High School. He is also an actor for the Enduring Families Project, which highlights reenactments of local African-American historical figures to tell the history of La Crosse. He portrays George Taylor, a La Crosse resident from the mid-1800s and the first Black American to run for president. Daryl is also a member and co-chair of Creating a Healthier Multicultural Community. And if I could give a plug for the library, Daryl was in last fall's Dark La Crosse theater production at the Pump House. I enjoyed sharing the stage with him. Phil Addis, who I'm not sure if he is here tonight. Phil Addis was the videographer, co-director and video editor. He studied theater at the American Academy of Dramatic Arts in New York City. Is semi-retired working for a local CBS affiliate on the cameras, CGs, and prompter. He's a recognized photographer here and abroad. He enjoys producing videos for a variety of projects and events. So that was me talking plenty. Now I'm going to turn it over to Denise, and she can talk about the start of the project. Take it away, Denise.
Thank you. Thank you so much for your interest. Thanks, everybody. Thank you for inviting us, Barry, and thank you, everybody, for being here. This project has been a very special project for both Rebecca and me. It started with a bus tour in June of 2018, 2 years ago, and I'm happy to see some of the other participants who were on that bus tour are with us tonight, and we will give them a chance to say something. Hi, Chauncey and Samara. This first set of videos focused around some people that are really special in the La Crosse and West Salem area. The common thread throughout all three is George Edwin Taylor. Rebecca kind of shocked me when she said, "Did you know that Nathan Smith was a foster parent of George Edwin Taylor? And so was Elizabeth Burt." I didn't know any about, I didn't even know that there was a George Edwin Taylor. So this project has been very educational. But the first video we're going to see features Elizabeth Burt, portrayed by Lynetta Coop, and her experiences living in La Crosse. As historian, Rebecca, did you want to say anything more about Elizabeth Burt before we start?
If I feel like I've talked to many people who are already here, so I don't know who is off the screen. Elizabeth Burt is a very, very important person to the city of La Crosse, and I'm glad we found her as being a person to write about and to portray. And it's sorry that the city of La Crosse has not known her before this time, because she was vital to the growth of this city in providing a boarding house. And it's sorry that we have no building for us to look at or any photographs for us to look at. She came to the city in 1857, which is an early time when this city was founded. And as I said, she's a very vital part of who we are in the growth of this city.
Okay, let's learn about Elizabeth Burt.
Well, hello everyone. I trust you had a good night's rest and a hearty breakfast. That is the only way to start the day. If you didn't, then you need to move over here to the Burt Boarding House at 1114 Vine Street. I am Elizabeth Burt, head cook and owner, and I can guarantee you a good night's rest and 2 hearty meals, all at an affordable price. My husband Albert and I were both born in Pennsylvania in 1833. We started working as cooks on the Ohio River steamships in 1850. We lived in various cities throughout the winter months in Ohio, but in order for us to keep working year-round, Albert decided we should work the Mississippi lines. We started in 1855 and we did the run between Keokuk, Iowa and St. Paul, Minnesota. I continued working until I saved enough money to start my own business. We chose La Crosse as our home. It was a small little town on the top of the Mississippi River, sorely in need of rooms to rent. La Crosse was in a logging boom and hundreds of young men were working in the industry. But young men never stayed in La Crosse more than 3 years. Why? Well, there was hardly any single women. And what was even more sad, landlords did not rent to black single men. That's why I started my business. Now, black couples and families, they had a pretty easy time of finding places to live, but black men, they were left out in the cold. Albert continued working on the steamships, first as cook, and then later as chief steward in charge of the galley. We did very well for ourselves. I invested in several other La Crosse properties, and in time, Albert followed suit with his own real estate investments. Our 3 children, Arthur, Mary, and Albert Jr., were born in our boarding house on Vine Street. Our own children were a handful, but when we took in foster children, discipline went right out the window. I loved them all, but still, someone had to go. And the hardest to let go was George Edwin Taylor. I knew he was a lost little soul because he caused so much trouble. When the police got involved, I couldn't have that. In fact, in the end, it was the courts that had to settle it. He got arrested, and I can't quite remember what he did, but Nathan Smith was called to take him in. You know Nathan Smith, there's a hill out there in West Salem named after him. George went on to college. He even edited his own newspaper in La Crosse and even ran for president in 1904. Imagine that. Because of him, I became interested in politics and the women's right to vote. Most people don't remember this, but Wisconsin had quite a women's suffrage movement back then. In spite of George's difficult childhood, he grew into a caring, thoughtful, and courageous young man. And I knew he always loved me. How do I know that? Well, later in life, when my investments were running thin, we didn't have enough money to pay the taxes. And there, standing in the doorway, was George. He paid our taxes. Never quite sure how he found out, but he did. He was such a naughty little child, but in the end, a great man. We decided to sell the Burt boarding house in 1882. Our daughter Mary was engaged to a young man from St. Louis. We traveled to St. Louis for the wedding, and after the wedding, we decided to make St. Louis our home. We opened up a new boarding house, and Albert Jr. followed suit with his barbershop next door. It was difficult to start over in a new town, but St. Louis offered a great opportunity as it was a growing, vibrant city. Over the years, many people from La Crosse stayed with us at our boarding house because the African American community in La Crosse was dwindling, and St. Paul, Oskaloosa, Iowa, and St. Louis provided more opportunities for growth. My dear Albert died in 1889, and I continued to run the boarding house.
Elizabeth Burt passed away on September 3rd, 1899. The story of Elizabeth Burt and her time in La Crosse. And thank you, Lynetta, for doing such a wonderful job of portraying her. Again, if you have questions about any of these videos that pop up, the questions that pop up, please feel free to put them in the chat room, and we'll talk about them after the 3 videos are done. That's our first exposure, our first tape of Elizabeth Burt, and our first introduction to George Edwin Taylor, who you will learn even more about in the next video. I did not know who Nathan Smith was until I moved to La Crosse. And I certainly did not know that he was a foster parent of George Edwin Taylor. And I didn't know that he lived in West Salem. And well, I didn't know that he lived in West Salem and that he was very important there. So I learned all of this after moving to La Crosse. And I think it's going to be really eye-opening when young school children, learn more about Nathan Smith based on this video. Anything else, Rebecca?
Nathan Smith probably has a lot written about him. You can find things in the library fairly easily. And we should note here that Errol Kinski in West Salem is probably the person who has collected most of the information and has it in his library. And he's been interviewed a lot about Nathan Smith. So he's the person that has been the expert on Nathan Smith.
It was very fortunate to find Wolfsty. I just happened to go to one of the meetings of Black Leaders Acquiring Collective Knowledge, and that's where I met Wolfsty. And I was very refreshed. I was very happy to find out that he had done some theater work in Rice, begins with an R. It's north of Eau Claire, Rice Lake?
Rice Lake, Wisconsin.
Okay. And so he graciously said that he would do the role. Lynetta, I just happened to meet because she and I were both directed by one woman who introduced us, and that is the director of our project, Vicki Elwood. I think Vicki's with us.
I'm on, but I don't have my picture. Can you hear me?
Fine.
I don't know.
Yep.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
So Vicki was fortunate enough to introduce Lynetta and me and some of the other actors in our production. So that's how Lynetta came to us, and I just happened to meet Wolfsty, and you'll find out a real interesting story when we get to Daryl. But for now, that's how we got in touch with Wolfsty. And this is the story of Nathan Smith.
Some men chew tobacco. Some men smoke pipe or cigar. Men like John Levy chew on his cigar all day long. drive his wife crazy. Me, I just like these lemon drops, and that's why I get some every time I'm in La Crosse. My wife Sarah, she hated them. So did my children. They too sour, they would complain. That's why I always get 2 bags of candy. Peppermint came for them, and all the lemon drops were mine. All mine. My name is Nathan Smith. I was born in a Tennessee plantation in 1820. My wife Sarah was born in 1830. We fled the plantation we lived on during the height of the Civil War and arrived in La Crosse, Wisconsin in 1864. Now, how we ended up here is an interesting story. You see, during our travels along the Underground Railroad, we crossed paths with Union soldiers led by General Cadwalader Washburn. Little did any of us know then that he would one day become governor of Wisconsin. Anyways, he and I became friends. He ended up making La Crosse his home, and I ended up working for Washburn as his valet. So Washburn invited Sarah and me to come to La Crosse with him. He even helped us find land for our farm. We ended up owning roughly 40 acres of land. And we were settled here in La Crosse, Wisconsin in 1864. Sarah and I must have had 30 children over the years. To tell you the truth, I lost count. Now your next question might be, how does a man do that? Well, you see, we're foster parents. So the little ones were with us for a little while. Physical abuse, too much drinking, and police officers on the beat will end up making a report. So the little ones end up staying with us for a while, then we sadly have to say goodbye to them. Sarah and I loved them no matter how long or how short of a time they were with us. Each of these children reminded us of a daughter, Sally and Eliza, back in Tennessee. We were like parents who lost their children. We didn't mean to lose our girls. We had always intended to get them back. We left them with friends when we ran away. We thought if we survived the escape, and we could buy their freedom later. So we ended up spending our lives caring for other children. We never did mind seeing Police Justice Hoover coming up a hill with another child for us to care for. He even helped raise the children of George and Carrie French. You see, George and Carrie were a deaf couple that lived nearby. And we helped 3 out of their 4 children learn how to speak. Sarah and I, with our children, live on a 40-acre farm between West Salem and La Crosse. You might have seen it going through West Salem, unless you go through Coon Valley and Bangor. That's a long way to West Salem. See, many of the people going to West Salem road and think it's shorter and steeper, but would end up resting their horse and rest for a while. And many of the older folks living with us enjoyed the company. We all say, bring some gossip from La Crosse when you come. You see, we didn't only take care of orphanage, we also took care of older people whose family had no time or patience for them. We got along well with our neighbors too. Our home was used many times for prayer gatherings. Many of the young men brought to us were assigned by the courts. They would help us with all the work that needed to be done around the farm. Most of these young men never made a run for it because food was pretty important. They never were late for a meal and everyone always cleaned their plates. He called himself George Southall. He is the last name of the first family that fostered him when he arrived in La Crosse. I think it was 1865 when he was 8 years old. You see, George was an orphan at age 5 in Alton, Illinois. And one day, while stealing food from a ship called a Hawkeye State, the ship took off with him in it. And next thing you know, George was en route to La Crosse. He was befriended by the ship cook, Henry Southall, and later his wife, Agnes Southall. Those people made a living for George, but George was still an alley cat. He loved being in the street and sleeping next to the river a lot more than he liked being in his own room. See, George never forgot the poverty of hunger growing up. This was true even when I sent him off to college at Wayland University in Beaver Dam. Sarah and I sent 4 of our young men to college. George was one of them. We loved all of our children, but I was especially proud of George. You see, he eventually owned his own newspaper in La Crosse, called the Wisconsin Labor Advocate. He was a civil rights leader and ran for President of the United States in 1904. He was my son. Sarah and I lived most of our life on our 40-acre farm. She died in 1892 at the age of 62.
Nathan remarried in 1895 to Elizabeth Johnson. He sold the farm and they moved to French Island. Nathan passed away in 1905 at the age of 85. He is buried between Sarah and Elizabeth in Hamilton Cemetery in West Salem.
That's the story of Nathan Smith. As you can see, there's some lip syncopation issues between the audio and the video. And when you look at these videos on your own, if you should have such an inclination to do so, there won't be the mismatch of syncopation between the audio and the video. But I think you get the idea of what the stories are about. So that's the story of Nathan Smith. As you can see, each of these videos can stand on their own, but it was just really nice that these 3 connected because the next video, as you can guess, hopefully you will guess, is the story of George Edwin Taylor, which these first 2 have been talking about. Each one of these can stand on their own. If these are used in the classroom, the teacher can, there are lots of ways in which the teacher can use the videos, especially during this time of the virus, when a lot of classes are online. We can still present these in classrooms. Let's see. I think that's all that I have to say for now about Nathan Smith. Okay, I think that's enough for all I can think of to say about Nathan Smith. I learned a lot about him after moving here, but I sure didn't know that he was the foster father to the first African-American to run for president until I got here. And I think that's really cool. Speaking of the first person to African-American to run for president, that segues into our next video, which is about George Edwin Taylor. It was very fortunate how Daryl and I got to meet each other. We were both celebrating Easter Sunday brunch, I with a girlfriend and he with his family. And I just happened to see him as my girlfriend and I left the restaurant. And I don't know, a voice just spoke inside of me that was saying, you've got to talk to this guy. And at first I resisted that voice, but then I realized I would have regretted it if I had not listened to that voice. And so I went back into the restaurant and talked to Daryl. And He liked what he heard. We exchanged contact information, and the rest is history. Come to find out, Daryl has also had some theater experience. He was in a production of To Kill a Mockingbird that the La Crosse Community Theater did a little over 10 years ago. So we're very fortunate to have Daryl as part of our group. George Edwin Taylor, what can I say? He broke a lot of ice. Obviously, he didn't get very far in being nominated, but the point is he wanted to make a stand and talk for what Black folks were going through. And it was very rewarding when I saw on The View on President's Day last year, February of 2019, on President's Day, on The View, Whoopi Goldberg and Joy Behar were talking about George Edwin Taylor. And I thought that was, it was national. I saw it on TV, so it was really interesting. Any other history or should we proceed?
I think what was phenomenal for us is that Bruce Mauser had written this great book about George Edwin Taylor that we had access to, and also we had access to Bruce Mauser. And he was a great mentor for us to have conversations with. And at one point, he was terrifically ill. He actually came to the riverfront and talked to us about when we were having some performances, and talked to Daryl and I and about George Edwin Taylor. And I think that was pretty memorable for both Daryl and for myself in particular, because we had about 45 minutes of time with him, where whenever I had phone conversations, we usually kept them down to like 10 or 15 minutes because of his health. So that was a very important thing for me. But anyway, his book was a great book of resource information for us on George Edwin Taylor's life.
We will now hear about George Edwin Taylor.
Good afternoon. I'm George Edwin Taylor. Was I born the son of a free person or of a slave? Actually, it was both. But in the end, it didn't matter. You see, I was an orphan by the time I was 5 years old. Since my mother was a free person, the law said I was free. My father, however, was a slave. And in February 1859, Arkansas said all free people of color had to leave the state. I was only 2 years old then. What I learned at a young age is that the death rate in this country is very high for all people of color, as well as for those who are poor. This was the beginning of what developed my political philosophy. I do remember, though, that I was a street urchin. I lived for several years in dry goods boxes at the wharf. I rescued myself by hiding on the riverboat Hawkeye State. It traveled up the Mississippi to La Crosse, Wisconsin. There, I met Henry Southall, who was a black riverboat man. And later I met his wife Agnes. Now, it was a smart thing for a hungry young child to attach himself to two cooks. It's too bad, though. I messed up that relationship by getting in trouble with the law. As a result, I was sent to live with Elizabeth Burt as a foster child. That would have been around 1868. Later in life, when she was having financial troubles, I helped her out. It was the least I could do for her after all she had done for me. But the greatest influence in my life came when I met Nathan Smith. Nathan Smith taught me the meaning of hard work. It was his firm hand and sound thinking that helped me understand the role of citizenship and the importance of an education. Nathan was a farmer and a former slave and disciplined in his work ethic. He was self-educated. Many men and women of all races sought his advice. I was a witness to this man's efforts in West Salem and La Crosse. The court sent many young, unruly people to his farm instead of a penitentiary for rehabilitation. I was one of these young men. Senior citizens, abandoned by their families, were also members of his farm. We would all help Nathan and his wife Sarah run their farm in West Salem. Nathan eventually sent 4 young men to college. Again, I was one of these young men. Because of Nathan's guidance and encouragement, as well as his sending me to college, I had the confidence to be able to run a newspaper in La Crosse from 1886 through 1887 called the Wisconsin Labor Advocate. It focused on labor-related political activities of the time and the conflicts between laborers of the time. As a black man, I'd like to have been viewed with the greatness of Booker T. Washington, Frederick Douglass, W.E.B. Du Bois. These men could have been the ones to run for president opposite Teddy Roosevelt in 1904. Instead, it was me. All I can say is, if you were in a room full of people wanting their equal civil and political rights, how do you start? How do you look into the eyes of the people in that room and say, it is not your turn in this generation to receive equal protection under the law? How did I view the people in this imaginary room? They were all workers. And workers needed to have equal representation in the legislature. They should not be hindered by special interests and the money they use to buy politicians. If the workers were to have equal representation, education, civil and political rights, the workers would move the country in the right direction. This was a populist view. However, it was no longer acceptable in America. It was more palatable coming from a black man as a member of the National Negro Liberty Party running for president in 1904. I eventually moved to Florida. I worked for Tampa's Florida Promoter. I was also editor to several other newspapers in Florida, the Daily Reporter and the Black Star edition of the Florida Times-Union. I was one of the nation's most influential black Democrats. I even marched in President Woodrow Wilson's inaugural parade in Washington, D.C.
George Edwin Taylor spent the remainder of his adult life in the Jacksonville, Florida area, where he passed away in December of 1925.
What I didn't know about George Edwin Taylor, Daryl and Walsty and I did a presentation for the West Salem Historical Society a few months ago. And I did some research about, for that situation. And I did not know that part of George Edwin Taylor's platform for president was he wanted a pension for all, and Rebecca was the one that told me this actually. He wanted a pension for all former slaves. He wanted anti-lynching laws, but it's really interesting. He had a couple of wives who were Black suffragettes in the area too. So one thing that can be developed from these videos, there's more to learn about these people, and there's plenty of room for additional classroom activities to supplement these videos. Such as his wives and their role in the suffragette movement and things like that. And I was really impressed that he wanted a pension for for former slaves. Well, we know how far that was going to get, but it would have made plenty of sense. So, okay, should we open it up to the reenactors and talk with them for a little bit?
Yeah. Why don't Denise? Do you want to bring them out maybe in the order of the videos?
Okay.
Can I say one thing before we go on? Because I want the Enduring Families Project. I want Orby to know that I took that name from his book, Enduring Families.
Or
I can't see.
did you hear that?
Orby, did you hear that?
You're on mute. Okay, I guess he did. Okay.
Orby, did you hear me?
No, say that again,
Okay,
please.
the Enduring Families Project. I took the term Enduring Families from your book.
Ah, okay.
Okay, I wanted you to know that.
Ah, I appreciate it, the recognition.
Okay.
Just so that you all know this, Orby Moss is from the Moss family, and the Mosses were one of the early African-American families that lived in La Crosse starting in 1857. And Orby Moss, one of the descendants, he's my brother-in-law. My husband's sitting in the other room. But anyway, Orby wrote a book about his family. And how long ago was that book written, Orby?
I'd have to guess now, but I would say probably 6-7 years ago.
Okay. And we use some of the facts from that for some of the upcoming videos. We will be having a video about Orby's and my husband's grandfather, Zachariah Henry Moss, who is, by the way, being portrayed by Tony there. Tony portrays Zachariah Henry Moss, and we have some other people here, but let's I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's talk with the reenactors from tonight, and then we'll expand it out to reenactors who have been with us in the past and continuing on. Lynetta, you want to start us off? What were your feelings about your character and the whole project?
Thanks, Denise. Wow, I hadn't seen the video really up close and personal till now, so it's really, it's really heartwarming to see. And first of all, I want to give my thanks to you, Denise, as well as to Rebecca for the hard work that you guys did in producing this and putting it together and putting up with some of us actors at times. But I felt I was really honored to be a part of the project. At first, I wasn't quite for sure what it was going to be about. And after reading it and listening to and seeing some of the parts, I was very honored to be a part of it. When I had the role of Elizabeth Burt, I had no idea what role I was going to be playing. Denise and Rebecca chose the role, but what was interesting is the line in there that, because of George Taylor, I too became interested in politics, which, I am a bit interested in politics. So that was, quite interesting to have that part in that. The other thing that I would say is that there's so much history that we have here in little old La Crosse County, I should say. We'll just expand it. And there's so much more that we have to learn about that. There's one line in my part that says, you know, Nathan Smith. Well, as Denise said, she wasn't quite sure who Nathan Smith was. Well, I was one that actually added that line. You know, Nathan, there's a hill out there in West Salem named after him. And I'm sure many of you who are from La Crosse understand that hill out there that's named after him. And hopefully that too will dissipate in time. I had a wonderful time doing it. All of the reenactors that are part of this are just excellent, and I'm so glad that I was able to be a part and share in this, and to you, Orby, Enduring Families of La Crosse. So thank you.
Right back at you. Right back at you. Yay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Speaking of Nathan's, now you hope, now the part that you want to have dissipate is the negative part about Nathan Hill.
That is correct.
I mean, you don't want the hill to dissipate, but
the negative tone of it. You know, my husband and I moved here to La Crosse in 1986, and I think that we weren't here probably 10 minutes till I had heard about that hill out there in West Salem, and I was like, wow. You know, so it was quite a well-known name, I guess, but I'm glad it's just Nathan Hill now.
Yep, he needs to be remembered for all that he contributed to the community. Isn't that right, Walsty? You're next.
That is correct. He should be known. Denise and Rebecca, thank you for including me in this project.
Right back at you.
Right away when I met with you and you were explaining to me like what the role would be, I'm like, oh, that's pretty cool. That's something that I want to do. So I know I ran with it right away, and I remember those summer evenings that we were trying to rehearse and trying to memorize all the lines before things happened. And I think it was every time with this project, every time I got a chance to see a new person come in, and I was always intrigued to find out what the new story was going to be, what their role was going to be, and what history that I was going to learn. And that's been like the best part of being a part of this project, because everyone that's involved, they played a really prominent role within the community and what they did. And I also thought about like when, you know, like let's say 100 years from now, how do you want to be remembered? So like, how do you want to be remembered? Do you want to be remembered for someone that's been involved in the community? Who did you take care of? Who did you leave an impact on? So being part of this project has always made me thought about that, like the way we remember Nathan Smith, because, you know, George Edmund Taylor, but also with all the other kids that he was a kind, gentle man. And everyone know like he was a nice guy and he took care of kids, and he left a legacy of who he cared for and who you know all the good things that he did. So I always thought about with being part of this project is like, what kind of legacy do I want to leave behind, or who do I want to help in the process. So thank you for allowing me to be part of it.
Oh, right back at you, Walsty. Thank you we're happy to have you.
The one thing that we shouldn't forget is that Nathan Smith was pretty active politically as well. He and George Edwin Taylor were elected to be sent as convention goers representing La Crosse around the state and into other parts of the country. And that's pretty notable for this former slave living in the La Crosse area to be nominated, then elected to go represent the La Crosse area at these conventions. So that's a pretty notable thing for this man.
Okay, next up we have Daryl, and then I'd like to hear from Chauncey and Samara, who were with us early on, who will hopefully be with us for another video, and then Tony, who portrays Zachariah Henry Moss. So after Daryl, we'll hear from those two also. Okay, Daryl, you're next. Let's hear from some people that were with us early on, and they portray an interesting couple, Ashley and Ellen Shivers. And Ashley and Ellen Shivers migrated to La Crosse from Cheyenne Valley, which is another whole section that we want to talk about in later videos also. He was a barber, and but he had lived with his brother Thomas Shivers in Cheyenne Valley. Thomas Shivers was the person that Rebecca was referring to when she did her first research in Milwaukee. So it would have been a brother to the character you portrayed, Chauncey. Thomas. Is that, am I saying it right, Rebecca? Thomas Shivers was the one originally that you found information on, and that,
Yes.
that sort of led to this whole project. But for now, what was it like being on the bus tour 2 years ago, you guys? You're on mute, Chauncey.
What about now? Can you hear us?
Yep.
Okay. So it was fun. It was really fun. And my favorite part about it was just seeing how engaged the community was about it. Like everybody, it changed a lot of people's mind about the importance of Black people in La Crosse, and in general, really. And so it was a lot of fun. And, you know, just seeing all the young people out there, you know, getting to learn this history and, you know, just again, how engaged everyone was, like how just willing to check it out and enthusiastic and excited people were about it. It was a blast. Yeah.
And we look forward to your video, the two of you, as Ashley and Ellen Shivers. We look forward to including, you know, a lot of these families had children, so we will look forward to seeing the little one in the video.
Yeah, you bet. Yeah. They're excited about it. One of them wants to be an actor anyway, so yeah.
This will be great. But yeah, we look forward to seeing you in the upcoming video about Ashley and Ellen Shivers and their trek.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I'm looking forward just to see how everything turns out as well. Just, you know, how everything sort of blossoms. You know, where we go from here with this whole project. So yeah, it was really fun 2 years ago doing it, and I'd love to do it again.
Great. Thank you for coming tonight.
Yeah, you bet.
And to you too, Tony. Tony? Can
you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. What?
Tony portrays Zachariah Henry Moss. In history, if you see Orby Moss there, Orby's grandfather was Zachariah Henry Moss. And that's the character that Tony portrays. And in the scene, it's a scene with Zachariah and his wife, Emma. And Emma was the person from Cheyenne Valley. Emma's character, and you just heard from Chauncey, and you see his wife, Samara, there. Samara plays Ellen Walden Shivers. And the wife of Zachariah Henry Moss was Emma Walden Moss, and they were sisters. That's what I was trying to say. Samara's character and Tony's wife's character were sisters. So, okay, let her rip, Tony.
Well, I really appreciate being a part of the project because I had stated before that it talks about a history that was never really told or understood, I guess. Because whenever we hear about history, we hear about slaves and stuff like that, but you really don't hear real stories about people overcoming obstacles and actually, you know, making it. When I heard about Zach, you know, and being a barber, it hit home for me because my mind can just go on and on about some of the things that was actually going on at that shop. Yeah, I know some of the things that go on at my shops. There's some beautiful stories that happen that probably never be told, and I can only imagine the same thing was going on in Zach's shop. There was a lot of good things happening there, and I feel like, you know, some type of connection with that, and you know, I don't know, the whole thing is just pretty exciting. I'm a big fan of boxing, so we have a lot in common there. And just knowing that all these stories, you know, was going on back then, because when I came to Crosse years ago, I didn't know about any of this. You know, I started hearing about little things here and there. I heard about the hill. I wasn't too happy about that, but that's a beautiful story, you know, and it should never be talked about in that type of manner. But the stories and the excitement, like Chauncey was saying, that people get when they talk about these stories is a good thing, and it helps educate and maybe bring people together. And you know, instead of us being all separated sometimes. So I could go on and on and on, but you know, that's about it right now.
Right back at you, Tony. I only have are there any other people? Rochelle Bruin. Rochelle, why did you turn off your video? Rochelle Bruin portrays Lydia Moss, and Lydia Moss, oh, there she is. Lydia Moss is was the sister-in-law to Zachariah Lewis Moss, who was the father of Tony's character. What's really interesting about Tony's character is that Tony is a barber and he portrays a barber. And what's really interesting about Lydia Moss, who is another person that's portrayed, is that she is being portrayed by Rochelle Bruin, who is herself a barber too. Would you like to say a few words, Rochelle?
Sure. Before I start, I want to bring Orion.
Yes, he was young. He was young George Edwin Taylor.
Orion, yeah, is the George Edwin Taylor in the video. So I didn't get to see everything that was filmed. So now that I got to see all of it, it was pretty exciting. So thank you for letting him be a part of that, because that was pretty cool. Oops, sorry about that. That was pretty cool. And so you want to say hi? Hi.
Rochelle, just so that you know, at the end of this, I think Barry's going to tell us the links where you can go to see the videos. So, and I think this whole conference is being recorded, so okay, you can pull it up and he'll tell us where, so that you can still see what transpired. Sure. But you can pull up those videos that Orion was in also. Yes. And your video will be coming, don't know when, but it's on the list of things to do. So
yeah, I'm pretty excited that this has been an eye-opening experience. Like everyone has said, we didn't know that the people from the past had such a place in this community, and I think it would have made a difference in my life 28 years ago if I'd come here and knew about them right away. I would have made some different decisions in my life. I mean, 20 years later, or 20 years ago, I decided to become a stylist slash barber. And then, like, when you gave me the first script, Denise, and I sat there and read it in front of you, and I started crying because this woman paved the way. And so I get really emotional about it, because these are people that are important to us and they need to be talked about, because our history will be buried otherwise. And that's not fair. Everybody else's history is being told. Why shouldn't the history of our past be told? The good history, and not just about slavery, because there's so many good things, so many good role models. This woman was a role model to me, and I didn't even know it. And so, and there's a lot of other young women that she could be a role model for. And come to find out that I have been told that I was a role model at my daughter's lemonade stand. A mom came up to me and said that my daughter pretends to be you. And so I started crying because I'm like, I pretend to be Lydia Moss. And now a little girl is pretending to be me. And I think that's very important that our young people have those good role models to see. I've known Lynetta for 28 years and I absolutely love her. And so no matter where we are, we could be across the street from each other. She yells to make sure that I see her and we wave at each other and ask how we're doing. And, you know, we need those positive experiences in lacrosse. And this is one that I love being a part of. So I greatly appreciate Vicki pulling me towards you, and Denise and Rebecca and Phil and Vicki. You guys are all doing such a great job. So, and you know, I would love to get the literary debate committee started again.
Yeah,
Because I thought that was a good talk with that first experience. So I thank everyone and you guys are all doing a great job. And Daryl, all of the actors are just phenomenal. Thank you.
I hear these voices and you talking about these characters, and there's so many more characters that we haven't even talked about yet, that they want their voices to be heard too. And I wish there was some way to get them on paper and be told as well, because all that history is so vital.
Looking through this, I think that's it. Are there any other reenactors? I'm looking through the list. I don't see any of the reenactors on here. So I would like to ask Vicki is the director of several of the videos, and I was fortunate enough to meet Vicki a couple of years ago. Vicki,
Phil too.
Huh?
And I said Phil too. Phil's here too, Denise.
Okay.
It was a new medium for me. I first want to say that, but the stories right away just were incredible. I could not believe it. They were stories that did not know about, and immediately you can see the actors are empowered by the stories. They're children who may be playing an extra something when you're around it, or the children that we've had as extras in the Nathan Smith video, and their mother, their parents, if they're involved. And as soon as they start hearing about it, we'll be seeing the George Pogue video. Are we going to see that one tonight, Denise? I wasn't.
No.
Okay. That's an incredible one, and I knew this kid that was a runner, and you know, he's been inspired by it. You know, there's just so many things that I just think children seeing these are just going to, not just Black children, but white children, to raise up Black children as their friends. You know, that is going to be something right there. So that it's just such a good project. It's so interesting, and the stories are just fascinating, and how they're interconnected. I love that. You know, that's interesting too. We were working on Lillian Davenport today, and Denise is playing Lillian Davenport, and it's going to be a great one. And she's connected to George Pogue in his later life, and so you know, it's so interesting, you know, and it just shows you how we are connected, and I love that, you know. So it's been fun. It's been the deepest characters I've ever worked on. I mean that. Well, they're real. I mean, how can you beat that, you know? I will be quiet.
The next group of videos that's going to be released will be George Pogue, who was the first African American to win 2 bronze medals in the 1904 Olympics, and Pogue Park is named after him. And Lillian Davenport, who was a musician that grew up in La Crosse And later in life, she and George Pogue knew each other in Chicago. That's the next two videos that are going to be released when the Davenport video they'll be released sometime in the near future, and you will know all about it.
All right, Denise, you have to give us a little sampling of Lillian Davenport. Ain't nobody's business.
Watch the videotape.
No, just give us one little line of that song.
I should get notion to jump into the ocean. Ain't nobody's business if I do. The rest of it you'll have to see. Thank you.
Denise, I think Daryl, are you on the? Do you have your phone there? I think he had tried to call in. He might be able to speak now.
Okay, Daryl.
Let me see if we can
mute.
I think he's got his here. Let me see. You should be able to unmute yourself on your phone. There you go.
Now you should be able to hear me.
Yes.
Okay. So what I wanted to do was just kind of give a brief summary of my introduction to Denise.
Put the phone to you, the phone.
During holiday.
The phone.
What Denise did not tell you was that what I got it.
Daryl, you want to speak through the phone?
My ear. Okay, what Denise did not tell you, is that better?
No. I'm gonna have to. I'll mute him here. I'm sorry.
Is that
maybe we
better?
can
Can
try
you
on the
hear?
phone.
I've got the phone on my ear. I'm speaking into it right now.
Oh, it doesn't look like that's gonna work,
And
unfortunately.
I've got the volume up.
Daryl, could you? Okay.
It may be interference. He might need to shut off the volume on his computer.
I don't know. I wanted to get to Phil. Where'd Phil go?
He's there.
I wanted Phil to say a few words while we're trying to figure out what's going on with Daryl. Now, Phil was recruited by Vicki. Vicki suggested Phil as our videographer. And I have to emphasize over and over again, when you look at these videos by yourselves, you will not see a lapse in syncopation. Everything will blend in together. So Phil, as videographer, you want to throw in a few words?
Well, this has been a very, very fun project that I've been asked to be involved with. It's definitely a process. It's putting a story from paper to video, it's work. It's definitely a process. But I believe every story is getting stronger and stronger. And I'm starting to understand myself the connection between all these people. And there's a degree of separation where we're all connected. And I'm really starting to see that. I was very familiar with Nathan Hill growing up in this area, so I have some connection there. But a lot of these other individuals that have united through him and outside of him, that's the fun part I'm having now. And actually, George Pogue, I was not aware of him winning 2 bronze medals either. And it wasn't that long ago that I finally knew about that. And he was right here in La Crosse. So I'm learning myself. It's an educational process. I have a background in theater, so I do have somewhat of a visualization. So that helps me when I'm doing the video as well, trying to tell the story. and keeping it moving forward. So I continue to enjoy our next six programs.
Okay. Daryl, did you
I'd
get?
like to say too, I want to sing the praises of Rebecca and Denise. They are so strong with this project. They are on a mission, and I believe the voices are speaking to them. They find things, and there's something interesting about that. Rebecca, you've told me some stories, and I think that the spirits are speaking to them. It's rather interesting.
Thank you. Daryl, did you get, you want to try it again, Daryl? Where'd you go?
He's getting frustrated.
Okay. Anyone else? I want to thank, I see Laura Godden is in there. She helped find a lot of the information that was put together for the Lillian Davenport video. We've just started taping that, and she was instrumental in helping find information about that. When the first time Lillian Davenport was portrayed was when La Crosse County Historical Societies did their Silent City in Oak Grove Cemetery a couple of years ago. And that was the first appearance by Lillian Davenport. And it was really nice to see. It was very helpful when Laura got that information. So thank you, Laura. Anyone else have any things to, it's been nice looking at your comments. Anyone want to share some of those comments that you wrote in the chat room, guys? Nice to see you, Craig. Very good to see you.
Well, as I was looking through the comments, there's a number that were talking about how to incorporate this content into schools. So maybe you folks would like to talk a little bit about that, and maybe how educators could do that.
Rebecca, you're doing that. You're on mute, mute.
Well, I just send a text to Craig telling him that if people email me at my email address, I can send them materials, because I know a couple people said, where can I get some stuff? My email address is mormonrebecca at yahoo.com or gmail.com. So if you email me what you specifically are looking for, I can help you. I have so much stuff. There's no way for me to really send it to you. But if you tell me what kinds of things you're looking for, or if you have a specific lesson plan you're working on, I can tell you what I have. Or if you want to have a serious conversation about what you're working on in your classroom, I can tell you what I have that would go along with it. Because if you can see my desk here, that's just the top of it. If you see the under my desk, it goes even further. I mean, it's an organized mess, but I know what's in the piles, and I've begun to put them in 3-ring binders, and I can find the stuff, and I've got started with a digital, but I am a paper person. The digital stuff doesn't help me much. I've got a lot of it digitized, but anyway, I can help you if you let me know what you're looking for.
Our next series, like I said, our next 2 videos, we might be doing this again with the next 2 videos. They have George Coleman Pogue in common. But as far as this, I see it's we're almost 10 minutes. We're supposed to end at 8:30, and it's already 8:20. So I was wondering, what's the next step as far as people looking at this program and access to the links? Barry.
Sure. So as I was saying, this program was recorded, so we will do a little bit of editing on the front and back end, and we will put it on the library's YouTube channel, which is LPL Connects. If you search for that on YouTube, you'll be able to find that. And then additionally, Enduring Families Project has its own YouTube channel, and you can find that by just searching for Enduring Families Project on YouTube. And as I mentioned at the beginning, the La Crosse County Historical Society is your fiscal sponsor, and they also host a page about the Enduring Families Project, or several pages about it on their website, which is LCHS.
History.org.
Yeah, history.org. Sorry. And yeah, and then we will also, when that video is available, we will post that on our Facebook page too. So if people follow the La Crosse Public Library or check in on the La Crosse Public Library's Facebook page, we'll let people know when the video of this program is available, and also we'll put in links to all of what I just mentioned before, so that they should have no problem getting a hold of anybody.
Not to put her on the spot, but Peggy Derrick is the executive director of the La Crosse County Historical Society, who is our fiscal sponsor. Anything you want to throw in there, Peggy?
Nothing you don't already know, Denise.
Okay, I
wholeheartedly support this project. I think you guys are doing very, very important work. The Historical Society is really proud to sponsor this.
All right.
You make us look good.
Oh, thank you. I guess that's it, but Barry, could we stay on, you, me, and Rebecca, and maybe the reenactors, to just talk a bit after telling everybody that we're done?
Yeah, I think so. We can try that. We can see if folks will take off there. So I guess that'll conclude our program for this evening. Thank you for attending. Thank you, everybody. Like I mentioned, I'll be putting out that information on where you can visit the Historical Societies, Enduring Families Project, the YouTube channels, etc. If you're looking for more programming from the La Crosse Public Library, and we're hoping to be able to continue to try to support the Historical Society and the Enduring Families Project in this way, you can visit our website, lacrosselibrary.org, or, as I said before, follow our Facebook page. Thank you, folks, and have a good evening.